4 years ago, I realized that there was something in my life that really just didn't fit anymore. And it wasn't a dramatic moment, it was just something that I had been questioning for years. Alcohol had been something that I relied on for a very long time to deal with stress and anxiety, and really just to feel more comfortable in my own skin when I was in social situations. It felt normal. Everybody around me was drinking, social gatherings, going out to dinner with family, just hanging out at the house with people. There was always a drink in my hand. And so I started to kind of question whether or not there was a problem there because I did notice that I was drinking pretty frequently and it really did ramp up a lot during the pandemic. I think it did for a lot of people. And then right after actually during the pandemic, we moved from New York to Florida. And when we moved to Florida, it was like, oh, well, we're near Disney. We're going to, we can drink around the world and we can go out to dinner and have drinks by the pool. But again, that had me questioning, like, am I doing this maybe a little too much? I had given it up here and there a few times, just to see if I could do it, or if I was maybe part of like a health challenge or something like that. And even during the pandemic, I had actually attended a few AA meetings online just to kind of get a feel for it to see, like, is this where I belong? Do I really have a problem? And I did go for a little while, but it just didn't like feel like connected for me. It just didn't feel right for me. So again, like kind of back and forth with the drinking. And then 4 years ago, I joined like an online fitness boot camp. And one of the rules was that you couldn't have any alcohol for the entire month. And I remember thinking like, I don't know if I can do that. But that also kind of triggered for me, like, if I don't think I can give up alcohol for a month, maybe there is something there. Maybe I need to explore that. So I did commit to it. And I started noticing, like, after probably 2 or 3 weeks, that I was sleeping better, my energy was better, and I just felt like all around pretty good. So after that month was over, I just kept going. I'm not exactly sure what changed here, what shifted for me to have me keep going. I just know that I felt really good and I wanted to continue that. And so that was sort of like what I kept in my mind was, you know what, you feel really good. You don't want to do anything to mess that up. And so I did keep going. And I can remember like telling people like, oh no, I'm not drinking right now. And we would go out and be with friends and stuff, and I would just say that, like, oh, I'm not drinking right now. But eventually it shifted from I'm not drinking right now to I don't drink. And when I made that shift, and I can remember like the first time I said that, I was like, wow, I mean, that's such like a big identity shift for me to go from like, oh, I'm not drinking right now, to say it like that. It sounds like I'm going to go back to it eventually, but to say I don't drink is very final. And I really did get to that point probably after a year or so, because that felt like a really big milestone. I think what really kept me going at that point was that I was realizing that alcohol was standing in the way of things that I wanted for myself. I really wanted to feel healthy and energetic. I have a history of thyroid issues. I had my thyroid removed about 9 years ago because I had cancer. And there was a lot involved in that, and a lot of just like overcoming that and recovering from that and getting better. And once I took the alcohol out, so many of those issues that I felt, like the sleepless nights and feeling exhausted all the time, there were just a lot of things that I was dealing with that alcohol made worse. And so once I removed it from the equation, a lot of those issues just went away. It definitely wasn't easy for me to give up. And I know, like, for the first month, I was just like, well, I committed to this. This is what I'm doing. But as I went beyond that, I mean, I had days where I felt uncertain. I felt self conscious if I was in like a social situation. But I also knew that I really liked how I felt without it. And so that really drove me to keep going. I also used to suffer from a lot of migraines, and those are almost non existent now. I don't get them nearly as often. I actually hardly get them at all, maybe a few times a year, as opposed to like a few times a week. So, those kinds of things really helped me because I was like, well, why would I want to have headaches? Why would I want to not sleep at night and feel like garbage the whole next day? It just didn't make any sense for me to continue that. And so I think that was a big piece of what helped me to continue going. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I didn't like announce it on social media that I wasn't drinking anymore. I did share, obviously, with my immediate family, my husband and my kids, and my siblings and my parents. But I really didn't share it with anybody else. And again, like if I did, it was always, I'm not drinking right now. Eventually, as I said, that shifted, but I just wasn't ready to share it because I didn't know if people would judge me. I didn't know, really like what people would think. And so I just didn't share it. And then I quietly started sharing like screenshots. I have this app that I use to track like how long I've gone without drinking alcohol. And so I think when I hit like 6 months or something, maybe I shared it in my Instagram stories or something, but I just never really made a big deal out of it because I didn't want it to be a big deal. I just wanted to be a change that I made and something that was benefiting me. Physically and mentally, I felt so much better, and I just felt like there were so many benefits to it. I think the area I struggled the most with was emotionally because I had been using alcohol almost as like a crutch, or something to like numb any negative emotions that I was having. If I felt anxious or uncomfortable or nervous or sad or scared or like any of those negative emotions, I would pour myself a drink. And that was just not a good way to live at all. But I did have to learn how to cope with those emotions in a different way. And I think that it was difficult, but it was also very empowering. And I feel like I have like grown up so much from that process. And I'm able to process my emotions in a much more healthy way now. Giving up alcohol really changed the way I see myself in a big way. It's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of how far I've come. I'm proud of the commitment that I've made to myself. And I'm really just proud of taking care of myself in this way and being able to grow and change more into the person who I wanted to be. One thing I would like to point out is that I don't feel like this was about discipline. This was a choice that I made over and over again. And one thing that I did take away from the few AA meetings that I attended was one day at a time. Because when I first started thinking about like all of the things that I felt I would miss out on, I wouldn't be able to have wine with dinner when I went out to dinner with my husband. I wouldn't be able to celebrate holidays in the same way that I used to. And when I thought about the big picture like that, I felt very, very overwhelmed. But when I looked at it as, I'm just making this choice today. Today I'm not drinking. And then the next day I would do the same thing. And eventually, the more I did that, that was when it sort of morphed into I don't drink. I'm a person who doesn't drink. And once that kind of tied into my identity, it's not even a question anymore. And I'm not going to lie, there are times where like my husband and I will go out to an Italian dinner or a steak dinner or something, and I would love to have a glass of red wine with that meal, but I also know that it's just not good for me. I'm not going to feel well the next day. I likely wouldn't be able to stop at just one glass of wine. And so through this process, I've really had to face some hard truths about myself and realize like who I am and how I interact with alcohol. And knowing that and being honest with myself has really helped me to continue staying away from it. The more I followed through on not drinking, the more I began to trust myself. And that's been a really big piece of my personal growth is just learning to trust myself and aligning my decisions and my actions with the kind of person I want to be. And I had always wanted to be someone who was, really active and into fitness and ate healthy foods and took care of herself. And drinking alcohol just didn't align with that. There was a study that came out a few years ago that showed that any amount of alcohol is harmful to you. It's basically poison. And I'm not saying that to judge anybody. I totally get it. I totally understand people, they like to drink. It's a really big part of our culture. But for me, it just made sense to stay away from it, to continue not drinking. And, it just aligns more with the person who I envision for myself. Now, not drinking just feels like a natural part of who I am. But I also know that I attempted to do this many times, and for whatever reason, just wasn't ready for that change. And there's really no way of knowing when you're going to be ready to change something until you try it, until you commit to it, and you stick with it. And that was basically what happened. There's something had to have shifted in my mind to get me to stick with it. But I'm really, really glad that I did. But I think in the past, I didn't trust myself as much. I didn't believe in myself as much. And I just didn't think I could do it. I mean, even at the beginning of this 4 years, when I was committing to 30 days without alcohol, I was kind of freaking out because I really didn't think I could do it. And I surprised myself by doing it and then looking at all of the other factors of, how I was feeling and how I was sleeping and my energy levels. All of that stuff was getting better. So I think that helped to fuel me as well. But the self trust was really, really key here. And now I feel more empowered and I'm not so worried about what other people think. I mean, I have over the years had a few people like make comments or, oh, just have one drink with us, or do you think you'll ever drink again? And at first I was a little bit like nervous about what people would think, but then I realized people were really just curious. And I think a lot of that curiosity comes from other people, like their own relationships with alcohol, and sort of like being curious about what it's like to not be drinking and how it's impacted me, and those types of things. So I really don't worry so much about what people think. It's also been really interesting just to kind of note how ingrained alcohol is in our culture. I mean, I will sometimes go out to dinner and, they'll hand me a wine list and I'll say, nope, thanks, don't need it. And I do sometimes feel like waitresses and waiters, servers in general, are just kind of like, oh, great, like maybe they feel like they're not going to make as much money or whatever. But it's just kind of funny because, you go out to eat and it's the first thing they do is hand you a wine list or a drink list or something like that. And the other thing that I always find is really funny is running. Like when I run races, beer is such a big part of that. And there was a few years ago, I was running a race, and I was maybe like, it was a half marathon, and I was maybe like 2 miles from the finish. And there was a lady saying, like, you've only got 2 miles to the beer tent. And I was like, great, thanks. I don't drink. Like it's very funny to me that like it's just such a big part of our culture and society. And also that the assumption is always that you do drink and not that you don't. I am really proud of myself that I don't need the alcohol anymore to feel comfortable in my own skin. For so long, and I've talked about this in other videos, I wasn't comfortable with myself, and I didn't trust myself, and I didn't believe in myself. And I had all of these stories and ideas about the kind of person I was, and that did not align with the kind of person I wanted to be. And now, after going through that and, just getting some perspective, getting older, I really am focused on making decisions that align with the type of person I want to be, the type of role model I want to be for my kids, and for really anybody who is in my orbit, who's around me. And that is just what aligns with who I want to be. And I want to stress also that this is a lesson that anybody can take, and it's not just about alcohol. I see so many other women holding on to things that just don't fit, they don't serve them anymore. And I'm, again, not just talking about alcohol. I'm not even just talking about habits. I'm talking about thought patterns and the way that they view themselves and stories that they tell themselves. And I see a lot of women doing this, and I feel like a lot of them don't even believe that it's possible for their story to be different. I think so often we kind of stick with what feels familiar and comfortable, and it can be very scary to walk away from that. But if you feel like you're doing something that doesn't serve you anymore, or even if you're questioning it, like I did, it may be worth exploring. Maybe that story or maybe that pattern just isn't part of who you are anymore. It doesn't need to be part of who you are anymore. If you are thinking about letting something go, I'd suggest just giving yourself a certain amount of time. A week or two isn't usually long enough to really see any significant difference. So I would recommend at least 3 to 4 weeks, a month, something like that. And just really give yourself some time to sit with it, observe, see how it feels. And then you can make a decision whether or not you want to continue without it or if you need to bring it back in. You don't need a dramatic reason to choose differently. When I decided not to drink alcohol anymore, it wasn't like a big thing. I didn't hit rock bottom, which is, something that a lot of people with addiction issues deal with. It wasn't anything like that for me. It was more a, hey, you know what? I'm going to see what happens if I don't do this for a month. And then I just continued from there. And that can be the same for anybody who's watching this, anybody who feels like there might be something in their life that isn't working for them or isn't serving them and want to try giving it up. Just give it a shot, see what happens. You don't have anything to lose except for the thing that might be holding you back. So, I just really wanted to share that message with you. It's something that has become a really big, important piece of my life and has really carried me forward, more confident, more, feeling better, healthier. And it's just made a huge difference in my life. So, letting go of the things that don't serve us can really make a difference. If this content has resonated with you, please be sure that you're following along by subscribing to my channel. I talk a lot about my own life, about the issues that I've overcome. And, really the intention is just to help others to improve their lives and to feel better about themselves and increase their confidence. So if that's something that you're looking for, please make sure that you're subscribed.